Right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the beautiful city of Cape Canaveral, Florida. You are at our City Hall Council chambers here. My name is Mayor Wes Morrison. I want to thank you all for being here. I also want to recognize a few people here that taken the time to be here. Obviously, we'll get to MRC and our presenters, but I think Mayor Pro Tem Kellum is here. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for being here. I think I saw Councilmember Davis as well. Thank you, Councilmember Davis. And I do not see the others. I think some are out of town, but I want to recognize them on behalf of the citizens of Cape Canaveral because this council has been solidified, fully supportive of doing everything that we can to improve the current state of the lagoon. So obviously, that's why we're here. We want to welcome you for being here. I grew up in Brevard County. I'm a child of Brevard County Schools, a product of their school system. My parents grew up here. I grew up like many of you, fishing these waters, going out in the lagoon, St. Johns River, surf fishing. And I remember beautiful times and capturing a lot of wonderful memories, looking back at those photos of the lagoon through the years with my dad and family members. And today I'm married and I have a 13-year-old daughter. And when I want to pay that forward and go out and kind of recreate those memories again, it's not the same. And so that's the sad news is that when we want to pay it forward and look into the future, I don't want my daughter, and I know we don't want our younger generation to know the lagoon that we see today is that's the way it is. For those of y'all who've been around longer than me, we know it has not always been this way. It doesn't have to be this way. But with great community involvement and participation like we have here today, we are thankful. We also have some special guests here from the city of Melbourne. Mayor Paul Alfrey, thank you so much for coming. This is the first learning session on the Indian River Lagoon report card in the county. If you go to the MRC website, you can see the future ones. MRC kicked it off at their lagoon house, but we are excited to be here and to be able to do something about it, start the conversation. And with that, MRC has done a fantastic job of taking complex issue in the lagoon, simplifying it in a way, quantifying real science, real data, and putting it in a way that we remember as kids in a report card. And I remember when I would come home with a grade that was good, right first thing out of my mouth is, hey, Mom, Dad, look at my report card. But if I didn't maybe get the grade that I had hoped for, I would push that off to the side. And today, it's almost like a parent-teacher conference. We're going to sit down and unpack what we've got going on. And with that, I want to thank our city staff, city manager, department directors. David Dickey is here tonight. Also, we have Zach Eichholtz, who is doing a fantastic job with our sustainability, and new member Lexi on the team, and so many of the citizens who have been involved in this community. But we couldn't do it without the heavy lift that the MRC has done. And I want to thank Steve Sharkey as well. Steve, where are you? Thank you so much for all your work. And obviously, Dr. Lisa Soto, we are so thrilled to have you. And with that, I would like to go ahead and let you know a little bit about Lisa as she will be presenting today. Dr. Lisa Soto is the Executive Director of the Marine Resources Council, a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting and restoring the Indian River Lagoon, coastal estuary. Lisa is an urban ecology researcher investigating the complex linkages between land-based human actions and water quality to address policy questions and guide strategic actions. Her professional career spans over 20 years working to improve Florida's water quality with Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Brevard County Natural Resources Management, and the Midwest Research Institute and the University of Central Florida. She now leads the Marine Resources Council, whose main tenet is community engagement, just like we're doing here today, bringing the Indian River Lagoon to help through science-based restoration, education, and advocacy. Lisa received a bachelor's in biology from Florida State University, go Noles, and the university, and a master's in nonprofit management and a doctorate in conservation biology from the University of Central Florida. My wife would say, go Knights. She lives in downtown Melbourne and loves spending time in nature and on the water. And before we call Dr. Lisa up, I am excited to share that the City of Cape Canaveral, at the last City Council meeting by 5-0 vote, took an opportunity that was presented to us by the Marine Resources Council to become Friends of the Lagoon. And so just moments before all of us walked in, I had the opportunity to sign the check for $1,000 to the Marine Resources Council, which is going to go into advocacy and research, the report card, all the hard work that they're doing in the city. And so on behalf of the entire City Council for their support, I want to put our hands together and thank the citizens of Cape Canaveral for all that the Marine Resource Council has done. So thank you. And with that, I would like to officially get a picture with Dr. Lisa and present the check to you. And so if there are any council members here today, we've got 2 at least, please come up. And any supporting staff who would like to join, just take a moment to celebrate this. So thank you. Thank you. And with that, we welcome Dr. Lisa DeSoto. Put your hands together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor Morrison and City Council. And thank you, residents of the wonderful city of Cape Canaveral, for being here tonight. I hope I'm projecting well enough for everybody out there on the Zoom. Thank you all for attending as well. My name is Dr. Lisa Soto. I'm the Executive Director of the Marine Resources Council, and I'm delighted to be here this evening to talk to you about what we do and about our wonderful estuary. So welcome to the release of our annual Indian River Lagoon Coastal Community Report Card. Let me get my little clicker here. On the cover of the report card, I hope everybody can see a monitor from your seat, because I'm going to be referencing slides a lot tonight. So on the cover of the new Indian River Lagoon report card is a photo of the Indian River Lagoon in Indian River County from the historic town of Sebastian, which overlooks Pelican Island. And you remember Pelican Island is our nation's first of 567 wildlife refuges. In the photo, a storm is passing as the sun is rising on another beautiful day in paradise. Many storms have come and gone since people first realized that paradise needed to be protected. Our little piece of paradise along the Indian River Lagoon. Many storms have come and gone, and many more are coming. And here in Florida, when it rains, it pours. Dry land turns wet, and trickling streams become roaring torrents. And all that land, from Ormond Beach to West Palm Beach to the interior counties, drains to our coast. People's yards, agricultural fields, cattle pastures, parking lots, rooftops, sidewalks, roads, and everything drains through the stormwater system into canals, into the rivers, to our coast. And much of it, unfortunately, ends up in our Indian River Lagoon. So it's not just the water that's coming in, no, it's also all of the pollutants that were on those lands that I described. Pet waste, fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, cleaning chemicals, everything in this photo that is up on the screen now runs off through the storm system into, as we just described, our coastal systems, fueling algal blooms. So with that flow, we also know the people are flowing into the area, not only in, but across our lagoon region. They arrive by air, by road, by water, by rocket ship now, in ever increasing numbers. They come to visit, to live, to work, to learn, and of course, they come to play in the lagoon. And we invite everyone to unite together to protect our paradise. That's why MRC exists. We have been educating and engaging citizens along the East Central Florida coast for over 30 years. With support from volunteers, members, and partners, we accomplish our comprehensive mission from Volusia to Palm Beach counties through 3 key program areas: science, education, and action. And I invite you to join us. We're a membership organization, so I invite you to join us as we continue to bring our lagoon back into balance by advancing the use of science to guide strategies, policies, and also to evaluate the success of what we're doing. So let's get right to that. MRC's most important, really science interpretation tool is our annual Indian River Lagoon report card. On the cover of the report card, it says, front and center, protect our paradise. Today, we're here to share some good news. What we're doing appears to be working to some extent. As you explore the report card, you'll notice this graph, which shows 2 different lines, water quality and seagrass over 26 years of data. So when you take a look at this, it's important to notice these 2 lines kind of have a relationship, and that there's a long tracked trend where these 2 lines kind of relate to each other. As water quality goes a direction, seagrass would go the same direction immediately following that year. So generally speaking, the 2 related to each other. But until about 1996, the 2 trended together. And then you see they start to separate, and they've been separating ever since. And we need to know why, because this is kind of a phenomenon that we're trying to investigate now. Water quality, the trend line, is relatively flat, not much of a decrease in water quality over the 26 years of data. However, you see a precipitous decline in seagrasses. The green line on the screen that you see in the graph is our target line. That is the regulatory standard that we're going for. So you can see again that there were years when water quality exceeded the regulatory standard. And now, it's not far from it. It's going up and down, but it's kind of staying relatively flat. Seagrasses are declining. So what is going on? So let's explore further. First of all, the only parameters that we're using in the report card are the ones that the state of Florida is using really to measure their efficiency at meeting their own TMDLs, or total maximum daily loads, which is a regulatory requirement. In the lagoon, the only 4 parameters that they're measuring regularly are nitrogen and phosphorus, which are 2 nutrients. And those 2 nutrients would fuel algae. So they're measuring chlorophyll A, which is a measure of algae. And then when chlorophyll A goes up, turbidity would go up. So they're measuring turbidity. And these things all relate to each other like I just described. Seagrass is the 5th indicator. So they all relate like this. So nutrients harm seagrass in that when nutrients increase, nitrogen and phosphorus, then there's more algae, increased algae, and then water clarity goes down, and then seagrasses go down because seagrasses are plants and they need light to photosynthesize. So that's the connection between those parameters. Also in the lagoon, there are regulatory targets for 10 different regions. So in our report card, we have to grade 10 different regions because what we're looking at is the difference in the actual condition as measured by the state of Florida and the actual regulatory targets as depicted by the state of Florida, where it's really a report on the state's meeting its own regulatory targets. So if they were meeting them, it would be a B and it would be an 80 and everybody would be green. That's not what we see. So let's look at water quality scores. And I know I don't have too many of these because there are a lot of numbers, but on the columns are the 10 different regions. So you're looking at all 10 regions. So that's a lot of information. And then on the rows, it's the years. And the point I want to make is in water quality, things at the very bottom line, it's the difference in the last year. So across all 10 regions, we've seen some increased scores in water quality pretty much across the board. Only in some areas do we even see a negative number there. It's like a -1, meaning that water quality score declined by 1. In most regions, including the Banana River, water quality improved by 28 points in the Banana River in a single year. So we're seeing water clarity coming back, but the seagrasses are not coming back. The other point I want to make about the water quality graph here, and you don't even have to look at any of the details, is just look at the colors. And you can see the years, all those kind of green, light colored years there in the aughts, 2005, 2006, 2007. Look how good water quality was. We were meeting practically and exceeding our water quality standards across the board. And then the super bloom happened and everything changed. And now we've got a whole different situation. Seagrass scores a lot hotter here, declining across the board. In the same place that we saw an increase in water clarity, we only saw seagrasses increase by 1 point in the Banana River. In the central Indian River Lagoon North, and a decline of 23 points. The North Indian River Lagoon, which is tightest fill down to Melbourne Causeway, a decline of 33 points. So across, most of the regions of the Indian River Lagoon, seagrass is continuing to decline, and the current overall health is an F minus minus. We had to come up with a new grade this year, a score of a 33. So what do we know about seagrasses? Because what's going on with them? We need to understand them very well before we can really start throwing them back out there. So there are 7 different species. We have a very diverse system. So there's 7 species, some of them spread by seeds, some spread by underground roots called rhizomes, where they'll kind of colonize, they'll pop up somewhere else. They used to cover the entire lagoon bottom. We had, at the height of the mid-aughts there, we had over 47,000 acres of seagrass in the lagoon. So, what was it there? How was it there? And why was it there? So seagrass covered the lagoon. It provides structure, meaning it was holding sediment in place. This is an important function that we've lost now. Of course, it provided food for pretty much all of the vegetarian fish. So not just manatees, but the sea turtles and the pinfish and all those bait fish that like to eat the vegetarians, the first rung of the food chain. All of those creatures are suffering, and I'll show you charts. And of course, habitat, so it's a good place to hide. The baby fish can hide from the bigger fish and the crabs and so on. St. John's River Water Management District suspects that it provides about $1 billion in ecosystem services annually at its full growth potential. So that's a small investment in seagrass restoration is going to bring back a lot of return on investment at $1 billion a year in ecosystem services. So we need to get our seagrasses back. We've lost almost 96% of them to date. So going back to this wonderful graph again. So it makes sense, up to a certain point that seagrasses are going to respond to water clarity. So maybe a year after water clarity returns, we would see seagrasses start to return. So this change that happened in about 2010, 2011, when the 2 lines start to diverge, what's the difference? What has happened here? You can see that there was sometimes a lag where it would take a year or 2 before the seagrasses would respond. However, that just doesn't seem to be happening anymore. So we don't know why seagrasses aren't returning. It could be a number of things. One is what I mentioned earlier about structure. So if there's nothing down there holding the sediment in place, is it making seagrasses having a harder time to get reestablished, especially the seed ones? So the ones that are bearing seeds, the seeds are landing. If the sand is rolling, they don't have enough time to establish. That kind of makes sense. That's one hypothesis. Of course, we know it's being overeaten. So right now, when it comes up, if it can be reached, something is going to eat it. So that's an issue for sure. However, we do have areas of the Mosquito Lagoon in particular that are maintaining seagrass meadows, even though they're being heavily predated on by the herbivores, manatees in particular. But the seagrass meadows are sustaining. So that's an indication that there are certain areas of the lagoon where the seagrasses are still in place, that maybe it's because they've got a hold and they're mature enough that even after they've been eaten, they're growing back. But we're not seeing that in other places. We may have something to do with water chemistry that's not being measured by the state. So they're only measuring 4 things. There are a lot of things out there. One of them is a whole group of herbicides. You might have heard people talk about glyphosate as being a carcinogenic chemical and one that's used a lot in land management. That's one of 50 herbicides that are being used in different types of, especially lake management. So glyphosate is something that's typically used on land, on vegetation on land. But there are a lot of things that people put right in their ponds or the canals, or the state of Florida is just broadcast spraying to kill things like water hyacinth and other aquatic floating weeds that are blocking navigational canals and disrupting flow paths. So we know that the state increased its herbicide budget 6 to 8-fold from 2007 to 2011. And then, those numbers kind of started to disappear. So there are a tremendous amount of herbicides being sprayed throughout the state. All of that potential is flowing into our estuary. I think it's worth a shot that we need to start looking for herbicides. And the good news that I have is, if we can't get the state to do it, we're going to do it ourselves. So MRC is, that was one of our really initiatives coming out of this, is we are going to move on getting herbicides tested in the 10 tributaries that lead into the Indian River Lagoon. We need your help. We're going to be training our citizen scientists, really train them up to give them the skills and the tools they need to do accurate data collection. And then we'll send them off to certified labs. The 3 tests, very pricey. It's about $1,000 a sample. So we're looking to start building our $10,000 chunks and start just taking samples. And if we find stuff, then we'll know where to focus future efforts. We need to put this to bed. So we need to find out if herbicides are an issue. Which ones are they? Where are they coming from? Or are they not an issue? It's an empirical test. I'm a scientist. Let's find that question out. And if it's not herbicides, good. Let's move on and find the next thing. Second thing we need to do, we need to figure the seagrass thing out before we start planting seagrass in the lagoon. How much do we want to, practice actually spending a bunch of money and planting stuff out there that's going to die? What we need to do is come up with a plan, and we've got the science to do it. We have brilliant seagrass scientists at St. John's and out South Florida and in the universities. MRC and Save the Manatee Club are co-sponsoring, and again, looking for more sponsors and support, a seagrass assembly 22-23. We're going to bring all of the brilliant scientists together and the practitioners in a room, figure out where seagrass is going to thrive. How are we going to do this with increasing temperatures and sea level rises? And how do we come up with a plan, a restoration plan, to prioritize where seagrasses can be planted and how we're going to evaluate their success? Seagrass assembly is number 2. The 1,000 Points of Life monitoring program is number 1. That's the increasing monitoring for herbicide use. And then the last thing, and this is where I really want to give a big plug to the city, the fine, fine city of Cape Canaveral, is low impact development. You guys have really set the bar here. You've done a tremendous job of creating community amenities with your stormwater management systems. And so congratulations to you for that, and to you residents for getting to enjoy those community amenities. Low impact development is a different way of building. It's a sustainable, economic and environmentally sustainable way of developing the landscape to remove the stormwater really before it ever hits the lagoon. So it's about getting the rain to land and go into the ground as close to where it lands as possible. And there are ways to do it. We're fortunate to have Chris Bogdan in the audience tonight. He's an expert on low impact development. So I hope everybody will have a chance to talk to him about it. But we did the LID conference to lead it off in last year was, 21 October. Thank you. A lot of the representatives of the cities and counties along the lagoon attended, and we're going to do the second follow-up in partnership with the University of Florida today to bring it home, help our cities and counties change their land development regs, and get LID, low impact development, put into place to reduce all of that runoff that comes into our coastal systems and our canals. So those are our 3 initiatives that we're focusing on. I hope that you will come and join us at the Lagoon House. Actually, I have more things. I'm supposed to be going through slides. Oh, so this is a beautiful seagrass slide. Okay, so as I've mentioned, seagrasses are not only the pinfish like to eat them, but I actually have some slides that show the Banana River Lagoon. So the water quality, this is the same chart that you've been looking at, except it's only the Banana River right here, this stretch of the lagoon right here by you all. And you can see that relationship, right? You can see how when the blue line plummeted in 2010, the red line, which is actually seagrass, plummeted the year after. So after that initial super bloom in 2010, we lost a ton of seagrasses in the banana. And then the super bloom ended, water quality went back up again, seagrasses tried to recover. Then the water quality, went down a tiny bit, seagrasses plummeted, and now the seagrasses have gone down and they haven't come back. So that's what I'm talking about. So what happened in the Banana River with water quality and seagrass scores is there. And this is pinfish. And you can't really, these are crazy standardized monthly averages. So the only way to really see a difference is to put the line where the super bloom is and then visualize. You can see how the pinfish numbers, those spikes of pinfish population are much lower and less frequent. So pinfish numbers are less post super bloom than pre. Snapper, it's the same situation. Look at the change in snapper population in the Banana River pre and post. It's more evident pre and post super bloom. And then the snook is the same. So again, you see the pre and post super bloom snook population data in the Banana River zone. So it's just an indication of what's happening in the system. We already know about this. This is last year's heat chart, manatee deaths statewide. The vast majority of them were here in Brevard County. So far this year, out of 375 in the state, 300 were in the lagoon. So we're looking at a similar situation this year as last year. So trying to get our citizen scientists engaged, get herbicides testing started. This is our Lagoon Watch coordinator, Cara Woods, doing Lagoon Watch sampling, and want to invite you to come to the Lagoon House and enjoy what we have. We're showcasing the Lagoon House really as a low impact development center. It's being sustainably developed as a completely accessible campus with the city of Palm Bay, providing access to anyone who's interested in coming here. We have a living shoreline along our, what we call our mini lagoon, which is really a stormwater pond, but we have planted it with emerging vegetation so that it can cycle nutrients better than one that just is grass down to the edge. Our parking lot has got pervious pavers in it. So even our parking lot is an example of low impact development. In our planted shoreline, which is actually an FDOT pond that we worked in partnership with them. We have rain gardens and rain barrels, and we still have rain barrels at the Lagoon House for sale in the short term. And we have nature trails that walk down to our restoration shoreline. We are testing natural oyster reef materials. We've been working hard with the University of Florida on a partnership to do restoration without the use of plastics. And so these are some of the really amazing oyster prisms that Dr. Mark Clark at UF engineered for everybody, and we are working with the city of Cocoa Beach and others, Brevard Zoo, Florida Tech, Florida Oceanographic. We were actually about to put these down in our lagoon, and guess what we found right by the Lagoon House? We found seagrass, so we don't get to put our oyster reef in, but we're happy to find the seagrass, so it's all good. So that's the oyster reefs that we had down from a couple years ago. Tourist Development Council grant. Thank you, TDC, for granting us this. It's built up about 20 feet of beach now. So it's another option for homeowners to protect their property. And that's what we're trying to showcase. How can you protect your property without having to put seawalls in? So here's another example of, getting the community involved in some restoration work, working in partnership with all kinds of awesome people. And we have our Lagoon Castaway Camps coming up this summer again, age 8 to 13, 8 solid weeks. And we'll be doing the Sea Perch, which is a really fantastic little remote control vehicle, and engaging on people and grabbing samples in the lagoon and actually running some analysis and figuring it all out. We want to get 1,500 feet of natural shoreline down and a community classroom in summer camp. So the seagrass assembly, we're going to do just like the science assembly that we did in 2016. And low impact development, the next workshop is in fall 2022, and it's going to be focusing on changing land development regs. And what can you do? Reduce your nutrient footprint. You know what to do. Visit savetheirl.org and learn more. The usual things. Here's a new one. Take your car to the car wash instead of washing it in the driveway, because that sudsy water is got phosphorus in it, nitrogen, it will end up in the storm drain. So anything you're doing outside in your yard, just think about, do you want it to end up where you're swimming? Because it's going to eventually through the storm drain. So do learn something new about the lagoon this year. You want to get involved with us, savetheirl.org. We need to keep doing what we're doing. Oh, here's one for you. Start a landscape revolution. Go to your homeowners association and tell them you want to take all your turf grass out and see what happens. Yeah, you can do it. People do it. It can be done. So just thank you again for allowing me to be here tonight. Delighted to be in the city of Cape Canaveral. We're going to be down in Stewart later on this week, and we'll be down at Indian River County Environmental Learning Center next week. We're looking for places in St. Lucie and Volusia. So anybody out there who wants me to come visit you in your community, get in touch with us. So thank you for being a friend of the Indian River Lagoon. These are last year's members that helped support the report card this year. Do get involved. We need to keep this an independent assessment of what's going on with the lagoon. So we need your support for that. So we need to keep doing what we're doing. We've got a lot of good projects going on. You know, we're so lucky to be in Brevard County and have that Save Our Indian River Lagoon tax funding so many good projects. They've got 50 projects in the ground now. I'm sure the city has been taking advantage of those opportunities. I know St. John's is doing a lot of rediversion work. City of Melbourne just did the largest baffle box on earth, I think. So everybody's doing a lot of great work. So we need that good work to continue on. We need to get that tax passed again. I'm worried about that because they're doing some great things and it needs to keep happening. Those big wastewater infrastructure projects and stormwater infrastructure projects make all the difference in the world, but we still need to get a handle of how we're going to grow smarter and how we're going to build better, so we don't have to keep doing this forever, right? So thank you for what you're doing. I understand we can take questions from the audience for a little bit, and I think those of you on the webinar will need to send an email to me with your question. I don't think we can handle those questions just yet. So thank you everybody. Oh, here's some resources. If anybody's interested in learning more, like I said, your challenge is to go to our website and learn something new. We also just launched a really cool climate change website with Dr. Ken Lindemann and the Citizens Climate Lobby. It's called IRLclimate.org. It's got some great information and a lot of scientific research about how is climate change going to impact our system specifically. The National Estuary Program has the comprehensive plan. There's their website, onelagoon.org. brevardfl.gov. If you have any questions about what they're doing with our tax dollars, it's all over their website. Go there and research yourself and ask the tough questions, and you'll find the answers there. Rivers Coalition is the lead entity, nonprofit down in Martin County dealing with the Lake Okeechobee discharge. If you're interested in learning more about that and getting involved in the LOSUM and the latest really federal actions to try to disconnect Lake O from the south end of the lagoon, that's your organization. And of course, Save the Manatee is our partner in this whole trying to save the estuary so that everybody can enjoy it. So that's all I got. Thank you all. I'll take questions. And is there a question protocol or people have to go to the microphones? No, yes. People have to go to the microphones. Okay. Would you like to ask a question at the microphone? Will I be the moderator of questions? Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Okay. I heard that salinity changed during one of the years after the super bloom in the Banana River, right? And I didn't know anything about that, but we have salinity data, and the salinity in the lagoon changes a lot. The seagrasses can handle high salinity better than they can handle low salinity. So I don't know, I'm not a seagrass expert, whether a high salinity situation would prevent seagrasses from returning. I know a low salinity situation certainly will. And I don't, so then as far as the second part of the question was an inlet, was it the inlet question? Does anybody have the inlet question? We can have that question. Okay, so the second part, I guess maybe, I don't know if I got the second part of your question right, but the idea of opening an inlet into the Banana has been talked about, discussed now for years. And FIT is now to the point where I think it's on the governor's desk probably right now, where they've got a line item to finish a pilot project that they would install a pump at around Port Canaveral that would just be a weir and a one-way pump that would take water out of the port and put it into the Banana River. That should be funded if the governor signs it. Hopefully they'll get that in the ground and start turning it on, and we'll see if it works. Finally, so that would be, we'll put, we can finally test that question. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here and having this. We're real interested. We've only lived here about 5 years, and just love all the things there are to do here, and we just hate to see and hear all these things about everything declining with the river. But we went to a talk about 4 years ago. I think it was 2018. I think you might have been there. And there were some different people talking that had done some research, and a couple, people that were in the government there talking about what was being done. And one of the things they talked about that would be a big help for keeping the river a little cleaner was the causeways, like 528, 520, 405, Titusville, all that land that was built up that is blocking the flow of the water. And we were wondering, like, they're going to change that bridge on 405, but we've heard and watching, we go over that quite a bit to get to, we live in Titusville and go over to Merritt Island for church and some different things. We've been watching what they've been doing, and they put all new piping and they put all new cables and things, and kind of redoing the shoreline of the land that's there. And I know that bridge that's there, there's the bridge, and then there's still a bridge, but it's flat over the water, so it's a bigger opening than what the drawbridge is. But the new bridge they're building is just that opening. They're not going to open up any more of that land that's there. Is that, is that true?
That's what I understand. And then I think the 528 is the one that's still under consideration, that they might try to raise it, some of it. But I think the 405 is a done deal.
Okay.
But you might know better than I do.
I just, watching things that I see online and that. And so we were just, curious. I mean, that's what was my understanding.
Does somebody else know? Somebody else might know more than, I don't know the latest on that project.
Okay. Because, that was like 4 years ago that they talked about that is known to be a part of the problem. Mm-hmm. And then here they are replacing this bridge and not fixing the problem. So, okay, you're just, wanted to see if there's a way to fix that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Robert Kane. I'm out of Cocoa Beach, so I know these waters pretty well, fishing with my kids and so forth. Just some good things that I've noticed, because I have a badge for the Cape. There's some seagrass up there, and it's coming in real good. I haven't been up there in about 2-3 months, but it's wonderful. There's blue crabs, there's real seagrass. So that's a benefit. That place was also barren from 2016 after the fish kill. Same at the base at Patrick. It's not the great seagrass at Patrick, but there's some there. So that's some positive stuff, just to say. The other thing is everybody probably knows Blair Wiggins and those guys that were sponsoring. Where are we at with the clams? I know they were pulling them down from Jacksonville and bringing them in, but I don't really know the results of that. So I don't know if anybody else knows, if anybody's looked into that. They did an oyster study. One of the kids that got accepted to FIT at my house, they just didn't make it, unfortunately. But the clams seem to be hardier from everything, but I haven't heard much more on that. And I know everybody loves manatees, and I don't hate them, but if you look at the studies that people did that were smarter than me, said in 1996, there was 1,600 of them. We had 9,000 as of 2-3 years ago. I don't like seeing them die like anything else, but fact of the matter is, that's a, that's a 10 times the amount, or what, 100 times, I don't know, that's pretty bad. But anyways, is that a detriment to your seagrass? Because if you go to the power plant, if you go to South Patrick Drive, that the people on South Patrick Drive have about 500 of them jammed up in the wet canal when it gets cold. And so those things, everybody knows the waste from them is terrible. And, you're not wrong that they're dying, but they're also eating things. There's nothing left. They're eating tree roots off the edges of the walls of my house. And finally, the half-cent tax. Where are we with that? You briefly mentioned something, I think, on your list of websites, and that really made me happy, because the difference from going to Indian Harbor Beach 3 years ago to what you were saying is they're actually spending it and doing it wisely. And I do see Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral doing the streets, because they're doing it at my house, and I was like, man, that's dynamite, it's good stuff. But I didn't. When I talked to the people at Cocoa Beach in the city, that money did not come from the half-cent tax. It came from elsewhere. So I don't know where the half-cent tax came from. And of course, we've all heard the mega millions that's coming from that in Brevard County. But I don't know if maybe you have some insight for that.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry.
My questions? Okay, the question, so the half cent sales tax, first of all, we don't get that. You don't get that. So I know that. What that means. So I think MRC, there's a Save Our Indian. So I would encourage you, because you're taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer in Brevard, and they're using our tax money. Save Our Indian River Lagoon Project Plan, Save Our Indian River Lagoon Citizens Oversight Committee, Save Our Indian River Lagoon Tax Procurement Process. I mean, it's all on their website. They are a sunshine-driven government, just like everybody. So you can go out there and get the list of who's been paid what, who your contracts, where they went to. They even have to make it easy, they have little infographics. So if you just want to see how much they spend on what, you can go and click to that website. It'll be 16 million spent to remove this much nitrogen, so many pounds spent to remove this much phosphorus. So they've got it broken down in a really easy to understand in terms of their goals, which is, again, consistent with the state of Florida's. State of Florida says reduce N and P. That's what we're spending our money doing, reducing nitrogen and phosphorus. So that's what their little thermometers say. This is how much nitrogen we're reducing. This is how much phosphorus. You want to know the details, click on it, find out about their baffle boxes and their nutrient reducing materials and all these different, engineering projects or wastewater treatment upgrades or lateral line replacements or septic to sewer conversions or rediversions of canals out west. There's all kinds of different types of projects you can drill into and find out more about. We see about $10,000 a year from Sorrel to do little smatterings here and there. So we're not a big, huge beneficiary of it in any way, shape, or form. I think people think we are, and they're like, oh, don't you get all the Sorrel money? I'm like, yeah, I get $34 million a year. No, we got, our budget's a lot smaller than that. So I encourage you, I think they're asking the right questions about Sorrel. You need to go out and investigate. Don't just speculate, right? Like, don't be like, they're wasting my money. Go look. If you think they're wasting your money after you look, then you can say it. If you're just saying it without looking and just being a loudmouth. I'm not suggesting you would say that. But do. That's what I want to encourage you to learn something. Like, I'm not going to tell you pick up your pet waste, go to the car wash, yada, yada, yada. You guys have heard that a million times. Go learn something new. Go to the website, go to the Sorrel site, go to Save the Manatee site and find out about the real population and its decline over time and why it was delisted. And now it's probably going to be extinct. I can barely even say that. So learn before you start, talking to your neighbors. Find out what's really going on. Yes, sir.
John Dillon from Cocoa Beach. It's interesting you're saying about pumping water from the port into the Banana River. Have you or any of your organization been communicating with the federal government in
No,
Tennessee about
not
this?
ever.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Actually, I've got Posey's 8 on my board, so I'm pretty much.
I'll give you this photograph and I'll describe these. These are aerial unclassified photographs before the B&B construction was started. It shows you the length of the bridge, what it used to be. The bridge there now on the north side past the VAB is maybe 1/4 of the length of the previous bridge. And Banana Creek, which comes into Banana River, was blocked on the crawlway. There were 2 pipes, I think maybe 3. Now, it's on the east side of Pad A. There's no flow from that way from Indian River into the Banana River like it used to be.
And it used to connect.
Again, that's another,
Mhm. Yeah.
be polite, I guess. Another
Change.
design from the Corps of Engineers like the jetty, which I'm sure the city has that. I'll give you these photographs and describe it with you before we leave. And hopefully you contact with the Corps of Engineers and NASA and try to make a little bit of improvements, but so water can flow through there like it used to be.
Reconnect Banana Creek.
They've got them. I mean, there's no flow at all. So anyway, I'll give you the photographs and describe it.
Thank you. No, I think that would make a difference for sure.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention. First of all, it's really great to have everybody's input because a lot of people are watching this and listen. When Wes Morris first got on the city council, I was the one that sent him all the data about the glyphosate, and the city was using it as a pesticide or, herbicides and stuff. So they made a resolution the next year not to have that used by any of the companies that are contracted with Cape Canaveral.
All right.
Thank Wes a lot for that.
Thanks, Wes.
Yeah, it's terrible. And also it's bad for the genetics of the next generation. So, but anyway, thanks for everybody's input. The aeration thing with the seawater or the Banana River and all the little canals. We were lucky in Cape Canaveral. We didn't have that fish die off right here. Most of it was down in Cocoa Beach and at Merritt Island. And they're dead end canals. They've dug them back so far in, there's no aeration at all. No wind to generate it or anything.
Mhm.
So they had the worst fish die off. And in Key West, when they built those big long canals, some of the people said, we're not waiting for the government to do something. They went in and they got all their neighbors all the way around, except for one. They said, well, I'm not putting into that. But the rest of them did. And they put an aerator in that dead end canal. And within 6 months, they had the seagrass growing again. They had fresh shrimp growing underneath every one of their docks. I think we all need to stand up and do our own thing and tell them, because I talked to the government about that. And they said, oh, they're navigational waterways. You can't put an aerator in them. I said, they're dead end canals. Where's the common sense here? So that's one more thing that really needs to be brought up with all the different coalitions, the city, and the public, the people. Stand up. It's your community.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay, start a revolution, people.
We have a few minutes left, so we probably have time for about 3 more questions.
Yeah, I want to address that. So the FIT did a study of aeration in canals somewhere, Satellite Beach, I think, on Treffrey. Yeah, I think he in Austin put some nano bubblers in, like super fine aeration things. But they had a couple of objectives. One was to raise DO at the bottom. One was to try to see if the muck would degenerate naturally, which it didn't. I think it was mostly a muck study, and it didn't work to get the muck to break down. But it did, of course, if you aerate any part of the water column, it's going to increase DO. So it certainly would work. You may end up with a halo, right, of gasping fish, depending on how bad the DO is everywhere else. But it would certainly work. It would certainly work. There's no not working about that. If you aerate your fish tank, your fish breathe. If you don't, they don't, right? So, for that. And I do agree. Power.
Yes, indeed. Power to the people. My name is Raymond Osborne from Cape Canaveral, and just a short series of quick questions here, talking points here. I was wondering, with your report card here, you have some areas marked with F minus, and other areas with C. And C is incredibly better than F minus minus. And I was wondering, what was the reason attributed to this change in different grades? Is it maybe due to density, human density, or is it due to herbicides, as you
Are you
mentioned?
asking me why, Ray? You're asking the why question.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. So there I know, so I think, you're looking at Indian River County, right? Indian
Mhm.
River County has the C and everywhere else has an F. So there's so many things going on there. Good. One is certainly they have way fewer people than we do. They have like 150,000 in the entire county. So that's a big difference. And then the other thing is that they had some foresight. They have an engineer there who's really very visionary, Keith, I think. I'm afraid I'll say his name wrong. And they had some foresight about dealing with their canals. They have two major tributary canals that are coming into Indian River County, and they've got a skimmer on one that's taking algae off, and they have a phytoplankton harvester on the other. So they're already figured out how to remove nutrients from the canals through harvesting vegetation and algae that is really novel. And it was put into place decades ago. I remember when he did it, he started thinking about maybe we can use, remember when algae was going to be the new fuel? Because he was like, maybe we can grow the algae that we can then sell it for fuel. I mean, very forward thinking, engineer who was trying to think of, we need to get nutrients out of the water column. Plants do that. Algae does that. We need to harvest those out. I mean, we talked about it now. Me and Dwayne DeFries are like, why aren't we harvesting gracilaria? Well, all we got to do is find it a commodity, market for it, and it'll be gone. People harvest it all, and it'll be gone. Gracilaria is a floating phytoplankton out there absorbing lots of nutrients. If we took it out, the nutrients would literally be getting removed from the system. So plants are the way to get nutrients out of solution. You can figure out how to do it. So those are two thoughts right there. And the third one is, if you ever paddled or sailed, I'm gonna say what, Indian River up the lagoon, you get to Indian River and the shorelines are green, right? They didn't put seawalls everywhere. So all those mangroves that are planted, all that natural buffer, that's natural, restored, they just never didn't, the shorelines are natural there. So mangroves take up, they're like a super plant. They're a big carbon sequestration plant. They take up nutrients from the water column. They take it up from sediment. They hold the sediment in place. They prevent erosion. They're just the almighty super plant. And they've got them all over Indian River County. They didn't let people put seawalls in like we did. So we've got the seawall issue. Now we've got bouncing energy back and forth across the lagoon, which is all this fetch, which is stirring up the bottom, which is probably why seagrasses can't plant. So nobody thought 20 years ago, let's not let seawalls be built because it's going to prevent seagrass from growing someday. Nobody thought that. So now we're dealing with it. And we've got this energy with this, it fetches, that rolling thing in the wave, going back and forth across Brevard County, bouncing off everybody's seawalls, tearing up the bottom, and eventually going to undermine all those seawalls, and they're all going to fall in, and everybody's going to come railing at us. Can we plant mangroves? So we'll get there eventually.
That's a good point.
But those are three good things they did. But you mentioned that, population growth is coming. So they're about to get, the same thing everybody else is.
Well, that brings up another point that I want to discuss to you, which is a good lead into there. You talked about different plants, and I was talking to you earlier about the need for plants, trees, mangrove trees, and how invaluable they would be to this issue that we're having.
Right.
Because another thing that I noticed, which is really bad, is that we've had a birding festival for many years now. It used to bring lots of tourists, but they're not doing it anymore. And one of the reasons being, there's no more birds. There's no more birds settling like they used to. So we had the trees, not only would we be able to filter out the water, but we'd also bring back the birds and wildlife, unless it's just part of the mass extinction event and we're just seeing loss of species. Are you seeing a lot of change in the habitats, eco habitats with the issue with the river, the lagoon at all, with the water quality? You're seeing that changing?
Well, we're certainly seeing a change in seagrass habitat, right,
Yeah.
that we just talked about. So that's the huge change. And the ducks rely on it also. So, it's not just manatees, everything. So it was devastating for me to hear the news that the Bird and Wildlife Festival was canceled, because that's almost like admitting defeat.
Yeah.
I was involved with BNA very early on. That was our dream of bringing ecotourism here and, priming the tourism engine in Brevard and nature and space and that whole beautiful concept. So that was a real kick in the teeth, to be like, oh, I guess we're giving up on that too.
Sure.
And our ecotour operators, really after 2010, most of them left. Whoever's left out there, they're doing it for fun, right? I don't think anybody's making a living on ecotourism in Brevard anymore.
Sure. One last observation is we mentioned about the Vera Beach and Winter Park, and Mombasa Beach has got a creative sea, which is quite good. And you mentioned about them having those spoil islands and trees on those spoil islands. Do you feel like having those islands that are populated with trees is a good thing for the river?
Sure, if you can keep them. So the spoil islands are hard to plant
Mhm.
because they're moving. So it depends on the spoil island and what the energy is doing. It's hard in Brevard because the energy moves so much. Maybe so you have to figure out your spoil island which way it's going, right? Because they're moving. They all migrate kind of to the west. So where do you want to plant so that you're not going to lose your vegetation is all I would think. But absolutely, anytime you can get mangroves or some emergent vegetation in the water, coming out of the water, along the water's edge, it's going to be serving a really important purpose or more than one. You know, nutrient uptake is one important one, but habitat and carbon sequestration and everything else that plants do. Yeah, super plants. Thank you, Ray. Good
Thank you.
point. I think we're good. Are we good? One more question. Can we just do one more and then?
Thank you. I'm Joanne Terry from Satellite Beach. And my question is on your graph. Have you been able to correlate the sharp turns up or the sharp turns down with any particular events, like bad hurricane season or something that's happened that would allow you to either predict or prevent like the next downturn?
Yeah, not so we're not there yet. We do have visual events in time, you know, just pretty much like just trying to figure out like what on earth happened prior to the first super bloom. So that's really where we've been focusing is what triggered that first super bloom that's now caused this kind of turnover that's happening now. So once the super bloom happened and these algae blooms started, now they're just cycling. So we kind of, now we know what's happening sort of with that, but what triggered the first one? And that's where St. John's would describe this, this triple threat, I guess, for lack of a better word, that we had a major rain event, which was Tropical Storm Faye, which like 22 inches of rain. I think that was in 2007. And then we had a freeze in 2008 that killed a whole lot of tropical fish in the Mosquito Lagoon, snook and other fish and sea turtles that couldn't survive that freeze event. It was a strange off-season freeze event that killed a bunch of fish and other life in the Mosquito. And then the next year it bloomed. So they kind of say we had this triple storm of a dry year, a wet year, and then a freeze event that they think triggered that initial bloom. And then once it started blooming, now we've got like the bloom. So it cycles. And I didn't explain that in that runoff chart. Once the bloom starts, when it dies, it fuels another bloom. So each of those tiny little nanoplankton or tiny little almost microscopic creatures, you know, these little tiny algae, there's billions of them. So when they die, something, bacteria, you know, consumes them and then it drops a DO and then the next thing blooms. So it's like becomes the cycle, you know, the one thing dies, it excretes its ammonia and then the next thing blooms, eating that ammonia that, you know, the bacteria just excreted from eating that previous bloom. So now we were in the cycle and we got all different kinds of algae. The algae scientists are having a heyday. We're finding all new species every day. It's great. But we got to figure out like how to get a handle on them. And, you know, how do we get them to eat each other? You know, it's like, what about the zooplankton? What about the plankton that eat the phytoplankton? Can we bring some of them in? Give them a smorgasbord? So we're trying to get a handle, but you know, I understand what you're asking. What I have is a timeline, right? Major freeze event, you know, just kind of more of a storyboard, you know, like a storyline of this big picture ecosystem. And it is incredibly resilient. And that's what I want to leave you guys with. Is this vision of hope that we have, our imagined vision that you all shared with us as a community, is that by 2050, we're going to be seeing our toes in this lagoon again. And I'm confident we can do that as a community because this system wants to come back. It is super resilient. You know, when we stopped dumping billions of gallons of untreated sewage in it, it immediately responded and cleared up and got healthier. So let's, you know, stop polluting it and see what it's going to do. It can come back. It can. It's an incredibly resilient resource, and it's our paradise. So it's in our hands. So let's get it done. Start a revolution. Thank you all.
I just want to thank all of you for coming here today. This is the Lagoon Report Card. Dr. Lisa, thank you so much, MRC, for putting this together. So, try to get this out There's a link. Marine Resource Council has a digital form of this that you can email to your neighbors. This presentation will be recorded at the city website online. I know that like former mayor is live streaming at Melbourne. We're trying to get this out as much as we can globally. So some things that we can do as we're heading out is pick up a few extra copies, share it digitally, and then take away, you know, one of the things I was talking about with my wife is, well, whose report card is this? And it's easy to point the finger. I think we can all go and say, well, this sewage spill happened over there, or this one down there. But at the end of the day, it's every private property, every parcel, every decision that we make, meaningful steps from reducing the amount of stormwater that flows back into our lagoon through low impact development initiatives that our council's doing. Our staff has worked very hard on preparedness targets, resiliency action steps, on meaningful steps that we can take as a city to lead by example, and then encourage through awareness what citizens can do. MRC and many other programs are doing rain barrel workshops. So get plugged in, find out what we can do in our little parcel lines, and collectively, I think we can see that vision happen. And so MRC, thank you for all that you do going out. We will follow in step and put the policies and budgets in place that show that we mean business. And thank you all for being here today.